Hi, I'm Peggy Farron, and you're watching the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Welcome. Today's guest is J. Scott Kelly, and he's going to be talking about finding our creative style. So stay tuned. Remember, if you can't watch us live at 4 p.m. on the Understand Photography Facebook page, 4 p.m. on Fridays, Eastern Daylight Time. On Saturdays, we put the show on YouTube, and also it gets uploaded as a podcast, so you can watch it on iTunes, or listen, I should say, listen on iTunes, SoundCloud, whatever you listen to your podcasts on. If you haven't yet, watch our free webinar called How to Get a Solid Photography Education in Just 4 Weeks. That is what we call our signature class. When I first started teaching, it's my philosophy that everyone needs to start out by shooting in the manual mode. I think that was why all the classes I took when I first started, everyone taught, oh, shoot in aperture priority, and then I never was really understanding what was going on inside the camera. So in the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography, our signature class, you're going to learn to shoot in manual on the first class. The second class is all about composition. Third class is about lighting, including flash photography, how to balance your flash to make it look natural, things like that. And then the fourth class, we call it the techie stuff. It's metering modes and drive modes and focus points and things like that, focus modes. But watch our free webinar. It's called How to Get a Solid Photography Education in Just 4 Weeks. It's a 45-minute webinar, so you are going to learn a lot just in that 45 minutes. And it will also help you put together a plan on what you need to know to become a proficient photographer. And from there, everything becomes so much more fun when you know what you're doing. It's an online class, but it's live. So the next class starts August 1st. You're going to have me right there with you. You're going to have homework. You're going to get critiqued, everything like that. And all of our online classes are on sale for the summer through August 31st. So get it while it's $100 off. It's the best time to do it. I also am speaking this summer. Speaking at the Cape Cod Arts Center Camera Club in Massachusetts, July 12th, at neccc.org, which is New England Camera Club Conference.org, July 13th through the 15th. That's in I'm saying Amherst, Massachusetts, but I was corrected and it's Amherst, I guess. They don't pronounce the H's in Massachusetts. Speaking at SwimSea, which is the Southwestern Michigan Camera Club Conference, July 27th through 29 in Holland, Michigan. And then I'm teaching at the Lightroom in Panama City, Florida, August 4th and 5th. So I'm getting around this summer, so I'm hoping you guys will come and visit me. My guest today is J. Scott Kelly, who's a photographer with 30 years experience. He teaches classes and leads workshops and photo walks from Florida's Treasure Coast. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell the audience a little bit my background with you.
Okay.
Is we have a mutual friend, Tom Tracy, and I've been friends with Tom for many years. And when I first started teaching in 2009, he said, oh, you ought to look and see what this Scott Kelly's doing over here on my side of Florida. He's doing kind of the same thing as you are. And I did. I went and I looked at you and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to steal that idea.
Well, good. Well, they say, you know, what's the phrase, copying is a form of flattery.
Yeah,
so that's great.
So,
and we're going to talk a little bit about copying and stealing from other artists. It's all good.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
So our title is Searching for Creativity, or Finding Your Creative Style. So what do you mean by that?
Well, as you know, we're a part of photography clubs and also the Florida's statewide. And I have found, leading a photography club, a lot of people are birding, sunsets, and all that type of thing.
Right.
But as a commercial photographer, which you have done, a lot of times, we have to find out from our clients, try to read our clients, what they're looking for, whether it's product photography or some sort of stage setup or whatever. So there's a lot more that goes into that to actually plan and execute something.
Okay.
So when I'm talking about finding your creative style, partly I want to challenge photographers to go out and create something that they've kind of put together, that they have been maybe thinking about it or whatever. And it's not for everybody. But to kind of give you an idea, I kind of more got into this in the digital age because now we can combine layers and do compositing and all that type of thing, and that's the fun part. And you know, back in our day too, I think photography was always the bastard stepchild of the art world. I mean, you know, photography is not an art, you know, but you know, I don't think it really matters whether you're using a paintbrush and a palette or whether you're using a mouse and a mouse pad. You're still kind of creating what it is that you're looking to do.
Okay.
So this all kind of transformed about the same time, 2009. I've kind of got the same story as you. You know, things happen digitally. When we went from film to digital, the whole, you know, photography world changed.
It sure did.
And either you kind of try to keep up with it, reinvent yourself, go with the flow, you know, or you're going to get buried. So I started teaching back in 2008. And when I moved to Vero Beach from Palm Beach County, my wife and I are both transplants. We were born and raised in Palm Beach County.
Wow, you're a real native, you know, Floridian.
Yeah, yeah. So after the hurricanes and, you know, all that went on and the real estate was booming, and we thought, well, it's time to, you know, get out. So we went up to Vero, and that's when the economy slid. And so, yes, we had to kind of reinvent as the economy was sliding. Then digital was picking up, and just everything, you know, there's no more 1 hour photo labs, there's, you know, no more film, so forth. But an exciting thing that I got, and I've got a print which, you know, your podcast people can't see, so I'll kind of explain it. Joe had asked me to, you know, visualize it. I was given in Vero Beach a challenge from the Choral Society. They were trying to do a fundraiser.
Okay.
And where my studio is located in Vero Beach is on what they call Gallery Row.
Okay.
We've spent the last 10 years building this, you know, 3-block area of Vero Beach in the historic district into the Gallery Row. There's probably 13 or 14 galleries there now.
Wow.
So it's really kind of picked up. All the restaurants are moving in, so it's a nice place. But the Choral Society was doing a fundraiser they wanted to do, and they wanted to invite artists to create a piece of art from a piece of music.
Wow. That
So
really hard.
so they invited, yeah, because they were going to do a calendar. They didn't end up with a calendar, but they ended up giving a CD to, you know, 12 artists in different, you know, mediums, and they said, there's 4 songs on here. Listen to them, and then pick one and create a piece of art out of it.
Okay, so these songs, were they original songs? Were they?
To tell you the truth, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether they were original. They were all acoustics.
Okay.
You know, as far as, I
and
mean,
when you're saying Choral Society, you're talking about CH.
Yes,
O-R-A.
yes, singing,
Okay.
singing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Choral
No
could
fish
be a
were
choral
involved in this. Yes. No fish were harmed in this. So no, it was singing. So, you know, I took this piece of music and I listened to all of them, and there was one of them that kind of resonated with me. There was a lot of drumming and everything. It sounded very African, you know, and that type of thing. So I went with that African theme.
Okay.
And from there, I went with the Lion King theme.
Oh, okay.
And being also, I'm an adoptive parent and whatever, you know, just as far as we were pretty much new parents. So anyway, this piece right here is what I came up with. So the girl who is in the picture here happened to be the waitress that worked at the cafe next door to me. And I said, look, I'm trying to do this. I said, first of all, I said, do you want to be in a picture that I'm doing? She goes, no. And then I told her what I wanted to do. I said, I want to do this Lion King thing where you're, you know, offering up, you know, the baby or whatever. And she said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So we actually started this image. You'll see, she looks like she's in water from the knee, you know, up, you know, she's out of the water. Holding up the baby. We've got the trees and the moon and, you know, the tapestry. So there's probably about 6 or 7 layers, you know, in that, you know, photo there. And it was just built upon that theme. The trees and the moon was a shot that I had done with our adventure photography group. We went out one year and I photographed all the full moons. That was just one of the things that we would do, is go out and photograph
That
the
was
full
a
moons.
year-long project, was
Yeah.
to photograph the full moons?
just photograph the full
oh
moons.
Oh my God, that's a great
so
project.
this was one of them. And those trees looked kind of African. It was just in one of the fields that was out there.
Cypress trees.
No, those are actually pines. Those
Oh, they are?
Yeah, those are pines.
Okay.
So that was one image. Then I took the map of the Africa and put that, behind it. And then there's African tapestry from there. So that picture is actually half.
All right.
So, and then the bottom half is the flood filter, which brought in the water.
All right. So,
that,
so you made a composite of several different pictures.
Correct.
Based on this picture. I mean, on this music.
Right.
I don't know that I would be able to come up with something. If somebody gave me a piece of music and I listened to it, how did you?
I felt the same way. But it wasn't until you really kind of sit down and start thinking about it, because you probably have not challenged yourself to do that, anything like that. And that's what I'm trying to, like with our photo group. I started another monthly meeting that was called Searching for Creativity.
Ooh, I like that.
Just to kind of, challenge other people to do the same thing that I kind of want to do, because you need that feedback,
so
from other people.
What are some things like that? Okay, that's a great exercise. Take some music, try to create a picture out of it.
Right.
What would be some other ideas to try to push your creative? It's hard.
Well, see, that one was hard, and that one was given to me.
Yeah.
Now, so that was a challenge that was kind of, presented. So I could give you a challenge and say, reach into the darkest depths of your heart, or a time in your life, and put that into pictures. So, okay, so that's a challenge.
I'm not doing unhappy stuff. Give me something happy.
Well, see, I kind of, it depends on your upbringing. So, but I think that a lot of the art that you see out there is about emotions, and I think if you don't have emotion in it, then it's, and that's why, as far as, photographing a bird or, all that is challenging photographically, and that type of thing, getting the right capture, by the birds in flight and, their wings just right and all that other kind of thing. And I think that's a conquer, type of thing that, okay, I got it,
Because it's such a skill.
Right. And then you're going to go for the next one, and then for the next one, and that type of thing, which that's one genre, of photography.
Yeah, right.
But as far as the art, let's say, of creating things that you might see in a museum, or how many times have you walked into a museum and looked at a piece of photographic art on the wall and go, okay?
It's weird.
It's
what
was that person thinking?
Yeah.
Or where did they get that from? Or, what does it mean? And, all that. And those are the questions that I think the audience answers. You put out what it is that you want to say that means something to you, and as long as it's okay with you, it doesn't really matter.
So do you think that's a good exercise, to go into a museum or a fine art gallery and just look at the pictures, and what kind of questions would you ask to kind of get your mind more creative? Like, what were they thinking?
What were they
thinking?
thinking? Where were they in their life maybe at that time? You as a viewer are going to ask all sorts of questions that, if the maker was standing behind you, they'd probably go, nope, that's not it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is a good piece of art, is because that piece of art may speak differently to many different viewers.
So how else can you learn to be creative?
As far as, I think anybody...
Okay, so I'm like right in the middle. I would not consider myself very right brain or very left brain, okay?
And I would say I'm probably the same.
I am probably lean a little to the left as far as my brain.
Okay.
Anyway, I like when people say, here's what to do,
right.
Step 1, step 2. So if somebody said to me, here's a piece of music, try to make something, I would really struggle. So maybe a way to guide them through that would be to say, hey, what does this music remind you of? Where does this take you? Do you feel like you're outside, inside? I don't know. I'm just winging it here.
Right, but I didn't have any of that, so when I listen, when you listen to music, let's say, depending on that piece of music, where does it bring you? I mean, this one piece, because I used to play the drums when I was younger, that the drums resonated with me. And then from there, it sounded very tribal and African. So it was the music that brought me to Africa. And what do I know about Africa? I've never been. So from
But
there,
you
it's
did
like,
see The Lion King.
but I saw, but see, that's just it. That's another piece of art that even, you know, I mean, video, film, it's all art. So, and that's all drawings, you know, too. So, and it was that scene that resonated, you know, with me. And I'm like,
that
okay,
scene,
so.
I have a story to tell about that scene. I'm going to try to, if I can find this video, I'll put it on the Understand Photography Facebook page. But my nephew, you know, had his first child, and my son is the godfather. So we went up, he lived in Cocoa Beach at the time, and for the christening. And we're at the beach with the baby, and my son picked it up and started
really?
singing
See?
that. So it must
So
be.
there you go, right
It's
there.
a very famous scene.
Right.
It was so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, brother. But
So,
okay, so what else can we do to learn to be creative?
educate yourself.
Okay, what do you mean by
Educate yourself and challenge yourself. One of the things that, and since then, let's just say I've gotten, I've tried to get a little bit more into this type of work. And I'll tell you about, we'll talk about maybe the gallery in a little bit later, because that's what's also challenged me there
would
too.
imagine.
But as far as, I've got, well, there's a book that I read afterwards that just came to me recently called Steal Like an Artist.
Okay.
And by Austin Cleo.
Okay, and again, we'll have those in the show notes.
Okay.
The link.
Very informative and helpful for people that want to be creative or start to be creative. And part of it is, the title is Steal Like an Artist. And we all get our ideas from other things, you know, other photographers. So, you know, the first thing, and you know, he was saying, you know, start a swipe file. And I've got folders on my computer that there's 2,500 images in there. And I've categorized them all, you know, as far as, you know, what theme or genre or whatever they may be. But it's just something that I would see online and I go, oh, that's cool. And it's either cool because I like this part in it or that part in it or whatever, the scene of it, any of that. So I put that into a folder, put that into a folder.
You gotta learn to use Pinterest, buddy.
Well, I do, but you know, one of the things about Pinterest, you know, I mean, Lightroom, I loaded them all in Lightroom, and even though they're categorized in different folders, I can look at them all at once. I could tell you, I've got a million Pinterest, you know, things there, but I have never once gone back to any of those. I'm a collector. It's like, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. It's like, but
And then you don't
you
go
know,
back.
but I will on my computer, you know, as far as in my Lightroom catalog,
Okay.
and I'll go, okay, well, and this is where I would like to go more, you know, into that. I just don't have time, you know, for that. But that's how you get creative. You just kind of like it, put it on the shelf, and then one day you're going to go back and start browsing through that shelf.
And this is
then,
just from you just seeing things, or are you looking for anything, or?
No, it's
Just-
either from Facebook or some groups,
And you'll
or
say,
you know,
"Oh, I like
online,
that."
and it's like, and if I see it, I'll just, you know, take a screen capture or whatever and put it into a folder and go, okay, that's something
So that
I want to
that'll be in your
revisit. Yeah,
mind.
so that's already in my, you know, my mind somewhere.
Yeah, because, you know, just making the action of saving that picture kind of imprints it in your mind
Yeah.
better than just looking at it and closing the website or whatever.
Right.
So,
And in this day and age, you know, that, I mean, you know, you're going through, you know, thousands of pictures a day.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I mean,
all
we
right,
used to print
so-
them and put them on the wall.
So all right, so looking at other artwork is one way.
And not just photography. You know, other forms of art. And I think, and even movies, I mean, my wife will tell you, and I think I kind of got into this first by going to a scary movie when you were a kid, or when I was a kid and go to a scary movie, which I really didn't like them, but you know, your friends go, oh, yeah. I would sit there and try to figure out how they made it.
Really?
Yeah, so because then it's not so scary.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
good point.
And looking at the lighting and that type of thing, it's like, okay, well, how did they do that? And, you know, you know, when I look at movies now, and especially some of the old time movies, just I'm intrigued on how they light them.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially in that Rembrandt type of dark lighting, and there's a light just coming from, you know, one area, and it's like, you know, talking about natural light photography. Well, if you could light like that cinematically, then you can shoot pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So looking at films, looking at other artwork, going to museums, you know, there's, you know, and it's not only that, but also reading. It's not all technical, because some of the things that you may read, you're painting a scene, you know, in your head, you know, there too, that is going to be, you know, fictional, you know, anyway. So you kind of.
But reading what? Like, what would you read?
Whatever intrigues you.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not an avid reader. I mean, my daughter reads all the, you know, Harry Potter things and whatever. It's like, you know, it's like if I looked at a book that had, you know, 1,000 pages in it, I'd break out into sweats. Go, how many pictures are in there?
But novels and things like that is what you're talking about?
I mean, that or, well, things that intrigue me, pirates. I mean, you know, there's Black Sails, the series on Stars. You know, I really got into that because it was not only pirates, and in that it was talking about the Bahamas and, you know, all that type of thing. So, I mean, I would love to do some reenactment stuff of the Bahamas and pirates and whatever, but that's in the collection. You know,
okay.
Now, unfortunately, though, I have to try to challenge myself a little bit more to try to do things that don't involve people. I'm a portrait photographer. I love photographing people, trying to find models. And, you know, one of the things that I've been working on recently is 50s theme, you know, things. So I was born in the wrong era. I like 50s and 60s theme, you know, things. So I've been going to thrift stores trying to collect outfits.
Okay, so you're still sticking with the people, though.
Yeah, because then I got to find the model. Yeah. And then I got to find the model, and she's got to show up. And, you know, all that. So it's, okay, well, then that gets put on the shelf because they weren't available, and they're not available for another week, and, you know, whatever. So I really need to challenge myself to try to be a little bit more artistic in my photography that maybe don't include, you know, people.
Well, what I've found in selling my artwork, when you include people, it's much harder to sell, too.
Yes.
Even if it's kind of a cool theme type of picture, it's still, people don't want strangers hanging on their walls usually.
Right.
So I like the 50s theme, though. You could do the diners and the cars and what else?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah, but as you said, what's the end means for it? Are you going to sell it? You know, probably not. You know, because like you said, who's going to want that unless maybe you were decorating a diner?
Yeah,
you know, so then, you know, but other than that, I don't think it's really got much commercial value or, you know, sellable value.
But some of the projects you just do just to you know, to push your creativity, right?
Right, and that's so I'll kind of go into the gallery.
Okay.
You know, a tad. I started what I call the Gallery of Hope back in 2005.
Okay.
And this was back then I was studying Charles Lewis. On how to sell higher-end portraiture.
I've subscribed to Charles Lewis for probably 12 years.
Okay, and I mean, I've got the Raiders kit, and I've got, you know, all that, which I'd probably like to sell to somebody else at this point. But, I mean, I've got all his tapes. It was after, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years. And I was like, okay, you're giving me nothing new. You're just selling, you're using your sales tactics on me to try to buy more. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm done.
Well, I was $30 a month, so it
for the tapes and the newsletter.
Or well, it was CDs. How old are you?
Oh.
Yeah, I was CDs. Tapes. Then it was downloads.
Okay.
But so the price never went up if you know. Yeah. And then he brought in this new guy, that Tom Morelli, who.
Okay, so that was after my time.
Okay, yeah, but he was.
So
really,
I studied
he brought a new edge to it, you know. That was more interesting, or not more interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, all the newsletter and stuff that, well, I'm not going to downplay Charles, but it was all the '70s, you know, material, you know, that was in it. But so I was studying that, and now I'm not sure where we were going.
Oh, we were talking about the gallery. So.
Okay. So part of his sales tactic, you know, was to get your work out in public.
Right.
So
12 displays.
Right. So I was working on getting, you know, my displays out there and in high traffic areas and that type of thing. So it was going to be, you know, malls, theaters, you know, and that type of thing. So I'm like, okay, how do I get that out? Then I started also reading at the same time I was reading The Purpose-Driven Life.
Oh, okay.
Pastor Warren's book. So I was reading that. It's like, okay, well, how can I give back? in the talents that, God gave me, how can I give back? So, and again, being that I'm an adoptive parent, adoption was, kind of high on the list. And I decided that I wanted to get my portraiture out there. So I contacted, at that time, Catholic as far as faith-wise, I contacted the people that helped the ladies that had found themselves pregnant and whatever. And I was doing a lot of maternity and child and whatever. I said, what do you think about me taking a dozen or so of your clients, photographing them in Mommy and Me, maternity, or whatever, and we'll get them on display, with your story on how you helped, these.
Oh, that's
well, at that
a good
time,
idea.
this one, and I forgot what the name of the group was, but they had just had a car drive through their window. And she's like, can you call me back in a month or whatever? And I'm not one to sit on things, so I called another one, and I which was First Care, and I asked them, and she said, by all means, come on in. So I did. I took 15 of their clients and photographed them in all sorts of, maternity, Mommy and Me, little boys with trains, and they all had stories. There's one shot that I did. The mom was alcoholic. She had gotten cleaned up. She gave her baby up for adoption. But I had photographed him with one of those galvanized barrels, and he was in there with the water. He had suds on his head. He had a little duck. And the title of that was A Clean Start, because his mother had gotten a clean start and whatever.
Cute.
So we kind of put these together and had, the paragraphs on how First Care helped them. So now it's time to get them out in public. So try to get them out in malls and theaters and whatever. They're like, oh, that's right to life. We're not touching that. So I couldn't get them on display.
Oh.
After all that work, and we're talking, I invested. I don't even want to tell you how much I invested in that.
Yeah.
All of
Did you
them
have
were,
everything already printed and everything?
yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So and then, but it ended up touring churches, which was fine.
Okay.
So, I mean, I still got it out into the public and whatever. I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. But that was part of the frustration that I had. So I opened up what was called the Gallery of Hope. And that was in the guys, at that time I was working out of my house.
Okay.
So he had the guy who did all my framing, he had a big framing salon and whatever there. And I said, how about I rent a room from you and I'll display the Gallery of Hope images and whatever there. And he said, fine. And then we just did, I wanted to utilize the art of photography to bring awareness to causes.
Okay.
So we did ones on, sunsets in the beach and whatever for the people that, it was a nonprofit that did dog walkers, the people that wanted to walk their dog on the beach. And they would clean up the beach. So to bring awareness to them, I invited photographers to, send in your best, beach pictures or whatever. And that's something people would buy. So then we would have them in the salon and whatever.
How big was this room?
It was,
I was
it was like 10-foot walls, 10 by 10 by 10.
Like a bedroom, like a small bedroom, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was picturing something smaller for some reason.
Yeah, no, it was pretty decent size.
Okay.
And we still had, in the center, the flip, cases and whatever there. So, but he had a very large, framing salon.
And most of your traffic was from events, or was it from him?
From events, yeah. So when we would have our openings, the nonprofits would send out all the invites, to all their donors and that type of thing.
Now, did you? Okay, so I'm just trying to get my mind around how much did that cost you? So you're paying to rent this room.
Right. That's really my only cost. And part of it, he
Okay.
gave me a good deal because in these images, we were, I was getting them to hopefully go to him
to
get their
frame
framing
everything.
done.
Okay.
Right. So,
And
so
then-
my only cost was really, that. And as far as advertising and literature and that type of thing was on the nonprofit.
Okay.
For them to print
That's
that
a
and to get
brilliant
that
idea.
out. So my job was to bring them together, try to bring the photographers together and that type of thing. So, and it was working relatively well, but that was, we first started this in 05, that was 07 by the time we were in there, and then that's when I moved in 08, the economy slid, the framer went out of business, so that idea got shelved.
Okay.
So I've kept that on a shelf for a while until just the past couple of years I've brought it back out because of where I'm at in Gallery Row. So every now and then, last year I bit off more than I could chew, and I tried to do too many Gallery of Hope exhibits. And I was framing and printing and
Okay,
stuff
let's
for
back
myself.
up though. So
Okay.
you have your own gallery now,
Yes.
but is it a gallery or what did you open it as? Did you open it as a gallery or as a photo studio or?
Multi-use. I mean,
Okay.
it was opened.
What was
it's
the name
second,
of it when you opened it?
Well, it's the second gallery that I've had in Vero. When I
Okay.
first opened my first gallery in Vero, which is when we started in 10 years ago when we were trying to get, there was only probably 2 galleries downtown.
Okay.
But there was one called Gallery 14, and I liked their concept. They had 14 artists all sharing space.
Okay, so a co-op.
Yeah,
We talk about
but
co-op.
they actually, which I think it was difficult for them because they were actually all owners in the business. So they all bought in, they all had money into it. And that kind of fell apart on them a few years after when they brought in an artist that quite a few people didn't like and they wanted to leave. Well, they had to kind of, dissolve the corporation and sell out their portion and that type of thing. So it wasn't one person running a co-op.
Okay.
So anyway, I was sharing a gallery space with another gentleman, and we had twice the space as what I have now. And we started that as Southeast Gallery of Photographic Art.
Okay.
And it was
And what kind of art were you selling then?
photography.
I know, but like of what?
We had all sorts of exhibits. Do you know Melinda Moore?
I don't think so.
I gave her one of her first exhibits. It was kind of, it was.
So it was all visiting photographers? Did you
Yeah,
have your own
I mean, I
work
had
in there?
some of my own work in
Okay.
there. So, and that was 1,500 square feet in there, and we had a false wall in the middle. So we had a lot of display area,
Okay.
in there.
Okay.
And then there was this other guy. We had a really cool exhibit there one time, which was a social. And there was a guy that was, I think it was in 2011. He was doing the worldwide moment. Did you ever hear that?
No.
No. So he was getting photographers like on 10/10 of 2010. So it was 10/10/10. Everybody was to go out at 10/10 and take a picture
Oh, what a cute idea.
and then send it to him. So he'd have all these thousands of pictures, and he was getting a good following. So, I was watching, then it was 11, 11, 11, and 12, 12, 12. And he even had Yoko Ono sent in a picture. And I had contacted him and I said, why don't we turn this into an exhibit? And we had 1,000 8x10s all strung up from.
Oh my
and I had my
goodness.
photography club come in and we took, I got Walgreens to donate the printing.
Okay.
And we printed up 5x7s of every single image. We put them on it was kind of like a paper frame that said Worldwide Moment, had the artist's name on it, and that type of thing. And we were doing donations of $10, and they would, be able to take a print. But I mean, they were literally from ceiling to floor over the whole gallery.
Wow, that's
It
cool.
was really a cool exhibit. So then.
Now, do you,
Sometimes
okay.
partners don't work, so we split apart.
And so you started your own.
I was without a home for probably about a year and a half. And a matter of fact, where I am right now, we looked at. Because right now, in the art district there's an old theater. It's no longer a theater, but it's prime real estate. I mean, we're talking neon, signage and, all
cool.
this stuff.
Yeah.
And we wanted to be in there. I'm probably in 600 square feet. And at that time, they had a nasty carpet in there, and there was water damage and whatever. And the landlord wanted us to replace it. And I'm like, well, we're not doing that. So when we found the other place, it already had hardwood floors in it and whatever. So we took that. It was a little bit more than we wanted to spend, obviously. And after we split apart and I was without a home, 2 different clothing stores were in the place that we looked at first, and they had already replaced the floor and everything. Well, when the second clothing store went out of business, I'm like, I'm in. So, and I've been there for 7 years now.
Okay.
So,
and now the focus on your gallery. Now it's called Gallery of Hope.
Well, it's.
No.
I had Gallery of Hope on the marquee for a little while, but now it says Island Images, which is my studio.
Oh, I
name.
see.
So, and I have one wall that is kind of dedicated to the Gallery of Hope, and I will change. Now, my gallery is open to any photographer. If they're working on a project like this, I'll give you all space.
Okay.
And this is the type of work, I mean, I have another piece over here that was for we've done exhibits on human trafficking, on domestic violence. I brought in one lady that I found online who was in Stewart. She photographed a doctor friend of hers in his last days of ALS, with his wife feeding him in a tube and him trying to communicate, on a computer screen, and all this very moving images. And he's got his little daughters running around in the background having a great old time, and he's in his last, stages. Very moving exhibit. I had, that up. I did one on homeless and hunger. That a pastor that I know, a friend of mine who had a soup kitchen. He still has a soup kitchen, but he's a photographer too, and his thing is photographing the homeless.
All right, so let me ask you this. How do you make money at that?
I don't.
You don't, so that's
No.
just a giving back project.
Yes.
Is this
Yeah.
gallery of
now,
hope.
and some of that, these images, people aren't going to buy. I mean, in the domestic violence, I took this great picture. I'm not going to, pat myself on the back, but it's a nice picture of a girl who I actually, it was another photographer who's an artist herself. She has Crohn's disease, and in her depth of depression, she would photograph herself. I exhibited her twice. Very moving exhibit, of her self-portraiture. And she didn't let anybody else photograph her. I said, look, I'm doing this thing on domestic violence. I'd like to have you made up by a makeup artist, and I'd like to photograph you this. She said, sure, you can do that. So I called in a makeup artist from Orlando to do sci-fi, bruising, cuts, and whatever on her. Did a fantastic job. So that was part of our domestic violence. But no one's going to want to buy that.
Okay.
But my goal for that is to gather these images and then travel that exhibit. So that's what I'm trying to work on now.
Just to help the causes.
Just to help the causes.
So you spent a lot of energy giving back, it sounds like.
Yeah, but I think what goes around comes around. And I think that some of this type of work, this is what grants are for. This is what artists in residence and whatever is for. So, I would like to, I've toyed with whether I want to turn the Gallery of Hope into a nonprofit, so that way we can raise funds. So that way the photographer gets paid for creating it, the cost of the image is paid for, and then that image gets donated to that nonprofit, that they can tour it, or that we tour it. One of the, that's what I'm looking forward, to.
So even though we're way off topic, which was creativity, this is
Well,
more
this is a part of
creativity of I don't know. You're stretching your photography, yeah, but you're being creative now. It sounds like in how to make money off of this, like helping the cause, but also.
Right, but in that, it's like, okay, how do you creatively, photographically depict domestic violence, homelessness, whatever. So there you're going to kind of, scour the internet, scour, different things, read different things, from, when we go back to educating yourself on that topic. Of what you can say, okay, well, how can I depict this photographically? And it's a hard challenge, and that's why there's not a lot of photographers working on, that type of thing, but I sure have found some, out there, and,
So that's another thing to do, is like the first thing you talked about was this piece of music that you had to come up with a picture. So now you're taking themes. Basically, you're taking a theme.
Right, exactly.
And saying, okay, how can I show this theme?
And that's nothing, different in the photographic commercial world, that it says, I've got this widget, and I'm into the tropics. I want a tropical flare, and you to be able to show this widget off. Okay, so you as a photographer, commercial photographer, have now got to, it's nothing different than an ad agency.
So let's take that. How would you go about that? You got a widget. Let's think of a widget. What's a widget?
Well, it depends on I guess what that widget, anything that might be,
let's say it's something to do with travel, like a travel vest or something, okay?
Well, when you're going with a vest, it's already putting it on a model. You know, I mean, you know, that's a model's job to wear a vest. You know, we're
okay.
not. So,
All right,
So
well-
there. I mean, yes. So now I'm going to photograph this in a tropical location, or say it's a set of luggage, and you know, they're like, you know, there's something, or a camera bag. You know,
Okay.
there's something special about this, about traveling, that it makes it easier to travel. So how are you going to show that piece? So now you're going to put me on the spot. That within 5 minutes I got to come up with a creative plan here. But that's the challenge.
So challenging yourself is what you're saying. Okay, this is what I'm getting. First of all, you get inspired by looking at other,
Right.
like everything, not just photography, but other art, life. You get inspired, you find different inspirations, but then you force yourself to think of a project or a theme or something like around your inspiration. Does that sound
Yes.
like a
Yeah,
way
and
that you can push your creativity?
And it's a process. It's you know, with a client you've got to deliver within a certain amount of time. When you're doing creative projects that are for yourself, you can shelf it for a little while, come back to it. You know, get more inspiration. You know, maybe it's just not ready to start executing it, you know, yet.
Do you think that, well, you said this in the beginning, that Photoshop has helped you with your creativity because
yeah.
you don't have the limits that you had
Right.
before, right?
Oh, yeah.
How important do you think that is for photography in general? Do you think most photographers should really learn how to do the layering and blending modes?
Creative photographers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, you know, portraiture or whatever, you know, getting rid of wispy hair, brightening the smile, teeth, you know, eyes, you know, skin, you know, that's work, you know, and some of that can be farmed out. But as far as combining things, some of the photographers that I look at, Brooke Shaden, there's if you start looking into creative photography, Google everything, you know, and sometimes allow yourself to go down the rabbit hole, because my ADD, I'll squirrel, you know, in a heartbeat, and then it brings you over here, then it brings you over here, then it brings you over here, and you're like, oh well, I've gathered all this type of information that relates to a theme, but it could be 3, 4, 5 totally different things that you started on. And then you just collect that information and then kind of go back to that folder that says, you know, whatever that theme may be. And you've got this folder of that theme, and you're going to go back to it and go, oh, I can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that's with the books dealing like an artist. What that is kind of really about there is, if you steal from one photographer, it's plagiarism. If you steal from 20 photographers, it's research. You know.
Okay, I like that.
So you're and that's his coin. You know,
Yeah.
that's not mine. So thank you, Austin. But it's the truth.
Yeah.
You're taking little bits of a lot of people, and like what he says in his book, too, is not only research that photographer, but who that photographer got their influence from. It's all this big tree. So you're going to garner little bits, and his other you know, analogy was also that we are the product of our parents, who they are the product of whatever. So we are a little bit of all of them. You get your eyes from this, your smile from here, your whatever, you know what I mean? Unless you're a twin. And that's how we look at our creative, you know, how to learn to be creative. So it is a form of, there are some very creative people that just come up with and pull this stuff out of their hat. You think that I was very creative by pulling that out of a song. I am not the most creative person, you know, out there. But I think we can learn, you know, to be creative.
I agree with that, and I do. I have a story about a local wedding photographer, and I consider her a very left-brain person. But she has some of the most creative wedding photography because she's been doing it a long time. She studies what the competition's doing. She, you know, and then she kind of tweaks things into her own style. And the more experience she gets, the more creative she seems to get.
And that's when you say, as far as style, when we kind of started this, you know, developing your style. As that develops and grows, we may change our style, you know, too. And some people, oh, well, I don't have a style. Well, if you've been photographing for a while, start looking back at all of your images. Is there a theme there? And it's not only a theme of subject, is it a theme of how you process? You know, even, and it's like, and as we get more talented down the road in processing and whatever, that changes. So therefore our work is going to change, you know, a little bit too.
Now, this is one of my philosophies. I think that the more you know about photography technically, the more creative it allows you to be. Because I struggled so much in the beginning with the technical side of photography. And I saw all the cool effects people were doing, but I couldn't even, like, I just couldn't even imagine how they did them, you know? Or it seemed so overwhelming that I couldn't even, like, attempt. So,
well, I mean, as teaching now too, I think it's the same. And what I tell my students is, you know, the same analogy of, you know, how do you, you know, eat an elephant, you know, one bite at a time. That don't look so much to the end, just look at the next step. Because if you start looking at where you really want to be and how daunting that may be to get there, you may give up.
That's exactly. I think that happened to me.
So
I
you
shut
just kind of
down
look,
many
okay, well, what's
times.
my next step? You know,
I took a
and let me just
photography
take baby
class
steps.
when it was called beginner photography class, and the guy, one of our first assignments was to go to the Naples depot, which is our old train depot, and take creative pictures. I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck does that mean? So, you know, we shared the pictures afterwards, and I was, oh, you know, people got underneath like the trains and, you know, all kinds of weird stuff. But for me, it was completely a useless class because
I bet it wasn't.
Well,
I mean, if you look back.
I mean, I'm not going to say useless completely, but it wasn't.
It forced you to do something out of your wheelhouse. And I think that's the whole thing, is challenging us.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't challenge yourself, you're not going to get anything. And I mean, you're in a photography club, yes?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Of course.
So do you guys go out on outings?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm amazed that we go out on an outing, you got 20 people shooting at an outing, and then they load them up into an album, and you go, whoa, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
And I shot the same thing. And I didn't see it that way.
That's actually part of my advice all the time, because you learn so much from the other photographers, and sometimes it's just that, oh, I should have gone underneath that train or whatever.
Right.
You know, that
different
was a great
angles,
idea.
and so that's all a learning experience. And you can take, you know, a challenge that I give myself and others as well is take the same subject and photograph it differently. You know, different process, different camera. You know, or, you know, try it with film, maybe, you know, just try different things as far as the same subject. Then take the same style, if you think you have a style or whatever it is you're doing, and then use that style to photograph many different things. So it's the opposite. You're trying to go both ways. And it's just an exercise in creativity is what that is. And this is what I want to challenge some of my people, you know, with. In the photo club, sometimes we all want to be fed. And sometimes I just feel like I'm the leader, you know, but I want to be fed as well. That's why I kind of started this creativity thing, because I want to do something else. And if you don't have somebody calling you to task, later.
That's,
you know, it gets put off later.
That's an excellent point.
So it's kind of, you got somebody else to calling you to task. What did you do this month? Well, you know, even if it's like I thought a little bit more about where I'm going, that's fine. And, you know, what's funny is in this group, one of the guys who's in our group, and this was a non-pay, you know, thing, and just an hour and a half in the studio, we'll just chit chat and get ideas and, you know, maybe even critique. I mean, that's one of the things that we do in our photo club. We don't do a photo contest. Well, we do a monthly one where people vote, but most camera clubs have a, you know, photography competition, and, you know, we have a critique. We put our images up on the screen and we critique them. That's the whole thing. We do that. It's a social and a critique. Because I think that's how you learn, you know, by that. But in doing this creative thing, it was kind of funny that the guy wrote me back on Meetup. It's kind of like, you know, how did the meeting go? And he said, I expected to be taught, you know, a little bit more. He goes, but what I realized is you were coaching us. And he sent me an excerpt on the difference between teaching and coaching. And I read that and I go, Yep, that's right. I don't want to teach you to do something the same way that I do it. That's for Lightroom, that's for, I mean, there's 10 ways to do the same thing in Photoshop, too, on how you want to brighten eyes or do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or face or skin, whether you're going to use frequency separation or anything else, there's 5 or 10 different ways to do it. I don't want to show you that. I want to kind of guide you along so you find the way that you want to do it, or that resonates with you, that goes, oh, well, this isn't quite so hard if I do it this way. Results are the same, or different. So I think it's about challenging yourself and people.
So what's exciting to you right now in your life? What's challenging your creative mind right now?
Well, right now is how I can get away from people. Is my challenge.
You don't mean
right? No. I
mean,
mean, yeah. well, yeah. I want to get away from people. No, in my work, I want to take the human element out somewhat. Some of these people, like Brooke Shaden, that I tell you about, all of her images, they're beautiful, but her model is her, and there's a lot of people out there that use themselves as the model. Well, hi, no, you don't want me as the model, so I'm not doing that. So how else can I do some things creatively to make people think? I mean, so my challenge to myself right now is trying to find some other work out there that can inspire me to do things that doesn't really involve a person. Although I think I will always still gravitate to that.
That makes sense, yeah. I know my training is portrait photography too, but since 2009, when I started teaching, everybody who comes to my classes, they're all nature photographers. So I thought, well, I better learn something about nature photography.
Well, there are.
And I have, found kind of, I have the same problem that most artists have, especially photographers, that I like everything. So it's like, oh, infrared today. Oh, I'm going to use my fisheye today. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to be, whatever. I have trouble focusing.
Well, I think that this is something that I would like to see in the FCCC. Convention.
And the FCCC is the Florida Camera Club Council,
yes.
which Joe Fitzpatrick.
Which is the
and you're on
I'm
the board.
North Area rep.
And Joe Fitzpatrick, who works here, is the president.
Right.
Anyway, so go ahead.
But
He's on the hot seat now.
Right. So what I personally would like to see is more of this type of challenging work for. There's a couple of reasons why I don't attend a lot of these type of conferences, because there's nothing being offered that interests me, because it's all the same thing. It's like a birding, outing, or it's the same kind of thing that you're going to find at a lot of the. It's going out and capturing. There's nothing about creating that I've seen yet. So I mean, if you want to reinvent the wheel. And bring something in that other people, may be interested in. It may be a small number of people, it may be a larger number of people, but I'm looking to do something more creatively. Let's, and I'm going back to people again. If there's costuming or whatever, here's a theme. Make something out of it. You got a day to do it. You see some of these like builder shows or whatever. Like, hey, you can do that with photography.
I sometimes am the most creative when I'm bored.
Okay.
Because I do a lot of event photography right now, and sometimes I'm really bored. One time the governor's wife was reading to children, and I couldn't take any pictures of the children's faces, and I was there for 3 hours almost.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, what am I going to take of the governor's wife?
Well, there's a challenge in creativity right there, right?
And I came up with some cool shots. Like I had, the kids were all raising their hands, and I was shooting her, between, framing her with the hands. And then it was in a school, so I was finding bookshelves that I could shoot through and, blur the backgrounds and shooting through the backs of chairs.
Right.
But that's one of the things for me that helps me. The other thing is we do the Old Naples photo tour every Monday afternoon during season, not here in the summer, it's slow here, but during season we do that every Monday, and I don't do all of them. But when I do, I'll bring a different camera or a different lens or something, and I force myself that the whole time I'm walking around, because we only have 2 or 3 or 4 people in each. It's limited to 5, so it's never a big crowd.
Right.
So I always have time to take some pictures myself, and I find myself forcing myself to try to come up with something like a long lens. Bringing a long lens on that photo tour seems like impossible, but I've done it a couple times now.
Well, I mean, when we were in photography school, I mean, it was like you had to use a 50. There was a few things that we were challenged. 50 millimeter lens. The other, I mean, back then you had 36 shots, you know, in a roll. So the challenge was walk 10 steps, take a picture. Walk 10 steps, take a meaning. I mean, and these had to be somewhat meaningful pictures. So you had to plop yourself down into somewhere and then take 10 steps and take a picture until all 36 were gone and see what you come up with.
See, I
so
think
that was
really,
it was tough. And you know, okay, you have to shoot with a 50 millimeter lens. Well, back in the day, I think that was more of a challenge to get the photographer to move. Now it's the nifty 50 and, you know, get the bokeh and shoot it at 1.4. I don't think that's really what the 50 millimeter lens was all about. It's just kind of what it's turned into. It's all about bokeh. And it's like, hey, that was circles of confusion back in the day, you know?
It's funny how things like, in your, I don't know how old you are, but I remember if you ever had like a blown out sky, that was like a big major sin. Like you don't know what you're doing.
Well, I still see crooked horizons that are,
now it's in.
You know.
It's in. So what's the next thing coming up for you?
Commercially, or I mean,
just in general.
In general, well, the photo club's, you know, going well.
And the name of your photo club is?
Adventure Photography and Photo Walks.
And it's in Vero Beach,
It's in
Florida?
Vero Beach. We have a small membership, and mainly because I charge probably twice as much as what other camera clubs do, only because I want serious people in it, and I kind of like a smaller group. So more photo tours. That's mainly, you know, what we're kind of doing more of, you know, nowadays.
Okay. Do you have a photo tour planned or not yet?
Well, we
or not. I shouldn't say not yet because you've already done them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've got. Well, but this is what I want to do more of on a continual basis.
I
so
see.
I've been building these up for the past 8 years. Our club goes on to one a year, and we just kind of put that into the hat of what we'll do on a regular basis.
Okay.
This past year, we just went in April to North Carolina to shoot graffiti, waterfalls, and flowers and so forth at the Biltmore.
Cool.
So that was a good tour.
They have graffiti at the Biltmore?
No, there is a place in Asheville, North Carolina that is the River Arts District. That there's an area that's old warehouses and so forth that kids would just go in and tag. But there's some beautiful artwork. You know, it's not just spraying your name and running.
Right.
I mean, there's some nice murals down there. And 3 guys bought it, and they've put a brewery in there. They've got a coffee shop in there. They've got a 12-bone smokehouse in there now.
Oh, cool.
A really cool area. So it's kind of what I would hope Vero Beach would become, but it's a little too stuffed shirt for that. But
so
we'll
now
see.
what's your website? Where can our audience find you?
As far as islandimagesprofphoto.com.
islandimagesprofphoto.com.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a mouthful.
Yes. So that's got, you know, that's just my regular website. And in there it'll have, you know, some links to adventure photography and for, you know, the photo tours. I'm about to launch a new website that just has the photo tours in it, and I'm going to try to take that away from the Island Images site. Okay. But as you know, I know you're building a new site.
Everything's time consuming.
Yeah, it takes time to do all this, you know.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
Well, you're welcome.
I appreciate
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And remember to check the show notes at understandphotography.com. So we'll have the links of the different things we talked about, the plugins and things like that. And while you're there, look around. We've got lots of different articles, blog articles, and you know, our motto at Understand Photography is we simplify the technical. So I think you'll like our blog articles too. If you're not on our mailing list, please subscribe. You can subscribe anywhere. Go on our website, there's subscription buttons, subscribe here, Facebook page, Understand Photography Facebook page, YouTube channel. You can subscribe anywhere. We send out a newsletter once a month with photo tips and what's happening with Understand Photography. I'm Peggy Farron. Thanks so much for watching the Understand Photography Show. We'll see you next Friday if you'd like to watch us live at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you for watching the Understand Photography Show. It would help us immensely if you would click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Get up!